I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. I just want to make a quick change in the order of the agenda. We're going to move up the under action items, item 3.03, the 10-month calendar. We're going to move that up prior to public participation.
Madam Chair.
Dr. Joyner.
Madam Chair, I move to motion the postponement of the consideration of the 2024 to 2025 and 2025 to 2026 10-month final calendar to the October 21st, 2025 board meeting.
You're moving to table the 10-month calendar?
To postpone the consideration of the 2024, 2025 and 2025, 2026 10-month final calendar to the October 21st, 2025 board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
Second.
Is there a second? Mr. Wilcox? And because the motion is to table the 10-month calendar, there's no discussion, so we'll vote on the item. Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough? Dr. Yarborough? Oh, Ms.
Okay.
Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Ms. Colon?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, and so that item passes. That item is tabled. And so we'll continue with public participation. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Okay, I have the timer set. And Dr. White, you can start to call people.
Our first speaker is Leslie Blateau, followed by David Lowe, followed by Jillian Lynch.
Evening.
Ms. Leslie Blateau. I'm a New Haven Public Schools teacher and parent and the current president of the New Haven Federation.
I can't hear her.
Is your mic on? Yep.
Now it is. There we go. Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
Mhm.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Blateau. I'm an NHPS teacher and parent and the current president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers. I want to take a few moments at the beginning of my comments tonight to recognize the power of collaboration. 2 weeks ago, NHFT's Union Community Coalition, led by NHFT members, many of whom are in this room, with the support of 5 other unions, multiple community organizations, at least 8 city alders, a Board of Education member, our state senator, and Mayor Elicker joined together at 3 schools across the city, Metro, Fairhaven, and Brennan Rogers, to call on the state and federal governments to fully fund our schools. And 3 days later, Mayor Elicker and Dr. Negron announced their proposal to add $3 million to the NHPS General Fund and $5.5 million to the capital improvements budget for our schools. That's amazing news. Very, very good news. So while this doesn't yet fully address the range of funding and facilities issues our students and our school employees are facing, it is a clear step in the right direction. And it's worth noting here at this meeting tonight, the power of collaboration. We, NHFT, are committed to this collaborative work because we believe our students deserve fully funded schools. We know the state and federal government must do more. We support the mayor's recent decision and will be working collaboratively with the Board of Alders, our elected officials, to ensure these proposed budget changes are approved. So I've got to pivot now because there's been a change to the agenda. And I'm a perennially hopeful person, and I'm hopeful that the switch to the agenda is going to allow us to use some common sense as we make decisions for this year's calendar. I think the 25-26, I don't suspect any issues with that one. I think the current issue is the 24-25 calendar. So it was with disappointment and frustration that this item is on the agenda, because what confuses me is this specific issue has never been an issue before. So I'm wondering why this year it's an issue. In 2019, when Christmas is on a Wednesday, we followed our contract, past practice, common sense. The rest of the state of Connecticut, December recess commenced on Friday, December
Madam
20th.
Chair, Madam
with an
Chair,
early
point of
dismissal.
order, point of order.
Dr. Joyner?
I'm just wondering, would it be more appropriate to discuss that item when it's on the agenda?
No, it's with public comments,
I think
they can,
I'm just
no, please.
I'll
asking.
I'll allow you to rule.
no, it's acceptable, Dr. Joyner.
Okay, I'm
Um,
just asking.
And I'll say I'm sharing my comments with the goal of no fault problem solving so that we can reassure the many members of the community here that common sense, past practice, and our contract will be honored. So 2019, that was followed. In 2013, when Christmas is on a Wednesday, we followed our contract, past practice, common sense, the rest of the state of Connecticut, and our recess commenced on Friday, December 20th with an early dismissal. So this year, past practice and common sense were not honored when the original calendar was approved with December recess commencing on Monday, December 23rd. So the Board of Ed changed it. However, that change had a contract violation in it, and we have a right to grieve that contract violation. In fact, it is NHFT's primary responsibility to respond to contract violations on our members' behalf. So that's why we're here, and we'll come back in 2 weeks if we need to. But I think we would much rather focus on our shared goal of fully funded schools. We would much rather focus on all the opportunities for collaboration instead of feeling in still a time of educator retention and well-being being a shared issue, still feeling like it's potentially punitive, definitely costly, and feeling like a top-down decision to revert to a Monday half day when no one else in the state is opening that day. So we really believe that precedent and honoring the contract matter here. And we believe that we should honor union members who demonstrate our collective commitment to our schools, our students, our city, and our community. And we can do that, I think, first by tabling the item and then figuring out a way to honor precedent and the contract moving forward. Thank you for the time.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. I'm David Lowe. I'm the current union vice president for high schools. I'm also a teacher at the Sound School in New Haven. Just wanted to add a couple of things. I really couldn't say it much better than Leslie did, but logistically speaking, don't forget we have a calendar in place that's been printed. It's been sent out. In fact, you can't even get a printed copy anymore because that was so long ago that any printed copies got sent out. That was September. People have literally created itineraries, made plans. They've bought plane tickets. They've made hotel reservations, including the 23rd of December. So I think the consideration to make the 23rd a school day now, after the fact, after printed calendars have gone out, after everyone's made their plans, not only would it be costly and punitive, it just doesn't make any sense. From an educational perspective, I think it's a hard argument to make that the 23rd is going to be so more educationally valuable than any other day in the year, that we're going to have to make sure that we have it. Again, past practice has had us coming to school on the 20th for a half day. And of course, we should continue that practice in the future. The issue about the 20th being a half day versus a full day, 2 hours. I think educationally, it's difficult to make the argument for those 2 hours being educationally viable and important, especially compared to any other day. I think we all know that's not the reason this change is being proposed. So I would just say in support of what Leslie Blateau said, that let's consider the 20th to be the final day. As with all other schools, there are 169 school districts in Connecticut. 168 of them have chosen to make the 23rd a holiday. Let's not be the one. If we want to retain and respect teachers, then we want to show them that we honor past practice and precedent in that respect. Thank you very much.
Next up after Jillian Lynch is Elder Charles Elbert, Hannah Marshall, and Agni Goldsby Wells.
Good evening. My name is Jillian Greco Lynch. I'm the general music teacher at Nathan Hale School. I am concerned with the district response to the New Haven Federation of Teachers grievance concerning the school calendar, echoing those before me. When Christmas falls on a Wednesday, as it does, the winter recess should begin with an early dismissal on Friday, this year being Friday, December 20th. This is an established past practice that has been utilized as long as I've been a New Haven public teacher, so both in 2013 and 2019. The fact that this was not initially on the drafted calendars this year can be looked at as an oversight. It should be corrected now while we have the chance and taken as an opportunity for us to strengthen the bonds of communication between the union, the board, and our families going forward. This also makes the most sense for New Haven students and their respective families. Having a single day will most certainly lead to an abysmal attendance rate if we have school for any amount of time on the 23rd. It happened once, I believe, in 2015, pardon me if I have the date wrong, or 2014. We had a single day back on Friday after New Year's, and I believe 250 students were out. That was according to my assistant principal that day. Districts across the state are following the calendar we are proposing, which also aligns with the language and the spirit of the contract. Respect New Haven teachers and the recess that we are entitled to contractually and the one that our families and our teachers deserve. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Elicker, Superintendent, board members. My name is Charles Elbert. I'm a grandfather, father, clergy, and I'm also the substitute steward for the New Haven Federal Teachers Association. And I'm here this evening because early in the year, we began to talk about our contract. Substitutes haven't had a contract in over 4 years. We do a very good job. We have been with, for myself, I've been with the board since 2008. I decided to really dig into pedagogy, SRBIs, learning goals and curriculums and standards at Southern, and I thought I was going to become a certified teacher. I tried DSAP, but got very disappointed when I had 83 positions and I couldn't get one. But I stood there because our kids need to see people with quality and integrity. Our children need to see African-American men in the classroom. So I stayed on as a long-term sub. Last 5 years, I've worked as a long-term sub. I've been asked to do things as a long-term sub that are outside the old contract. But guess what? I do it because I love my kids. 2008, I came into this district, and the week I started, I almost lost my job. But I'm still here. I'm here because I love our children, but I love the New Haven Federation of Teachers Association. We need a contract. There are districts in this state that are making twice more than what we are making. We, with Emily D'Amico from AFP, have sat down and tried to negotiate a good contract. The old contract had a lot of holes and flaws in it. And I was a part of the negotiation, but I don't hear too much anymore. I want the board to think we are doing our best and we are losing subs in New Haven because they know what it is. Just for an example, I work for a good principal. I work for a very good principal. I worked with Mr. Dyer since 2008. Now he's principal at Webster. I've been at Webster for 5 years. Let me explain something. Last year, I had a projectile thrown at me, hit me in the face. I'm a disabled Vietnam vet. And guess what? People say, thanks for serving. Stop saying that to me. Because you don't mean it. I served my country. Now I'm serving the district. All we're saying is give us a decent contract. I'm 69 years old. Architectural engineer, political scientist, paralegal. But I'm gonna be here for my kids. Are there any substitutes in the room? Stand up, please.
Madam Chair.
I know I'm getting ready to leave.
Time.
Dr. Joyner?
The comments should be directed at the board, and his time is up.
Okay, thank
So
you,
board,
Dr. Joyner.
I appreciate your time. Please, sit down with us. We need it. The subs need it. The district needs it.
Anna Marshall, followed by Agnes Goldsby Wells, followed by Tiffany Nelson.
I'm a Spanish teacher at New Haven Academy. I just wanted to come to support the calendar change. But also I just wanted to raise a facilities issue. We have, our staff bathrooms don't lock. And it's pretty, like frightening to try to, we can only go to the bathroom when it's a class change and the kids are in the hallway. So the teachers, are like knocking on the door to see if anybody's in there, but it's loud because the kids are in the hallway. And then if they don't hear you say, I'm in here, they open up the door and hello, it's like the kids can see you. Like it's not good. And this is something that's happened. It's been a thing since last year. And I know our admin has been trying to get somebody over. And for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. And I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. So hopefully we can get somebody over and get the locks doing what they should be doing. So that's all. Thank you.
I'm short. Got to bring this mic down a little bit. Good evening, everyone. My name is Attorney Anya Goldsby Wells, and I am here on behalf of my client, Tiffany Nelson. Ms. Nelson is not only a teacher in the New Haven public school system, but she is also a mother to a 9-year-old daughter. Up until recently, has been crying and completely fearful of attending school at Conti West Hills Magnet School due to the school's inability to keep her safe. So Ms. Nelson and her daughter have endured persistent harassment and retaliation for months. The specific allegations are quite telling. My client's daughter was subjected to months of humiliation and isolation by her teacher, Ms. Bartonek. Ms. Nelson has faced retaliation on her job
Madam
and
Chair,
as a teacher.
Dr. Joyner?
we are not supposed to name names and litigate cases. She certainly can talk about it generally, but she should not be calling names, particularly when we don't know all of the background information.
Your
Apologies.
point of order is well taken, Dr. Joyner. Please
No problem.
proceed
Happy
without
to
mentioning names.
Happy to remove the name. I'm just reading my notes, so apologies. I did mean to take that out. But Ms. Nelson has faced retaliation on her job as a teacher, and her daughter has also been just subject to months of humiliation and isolation by her teacher. So Ms. Nelson has brought this harassment to the school officials' attention, including the principal of West Hills, Conti West Hills Magnet School. And after months of silence and, quite frankly, a false sense of security that the school would be providing and doing something regarding the safety of this 9-year-old child, frankly, did nothing. So when this child returned to school, not only was she still subject to the same harassment and humiliation, she was specifically targeted by a cafeteria employee who proceeded to intimidate and to threaten her. Again, I'm not going to name names, but we know that these actions, along with others, if they are proven, are a violation of state and federal law. And so the district has failed not only this 9-year-old student, but has also failed the entire family. And we have made several Freedom of Information requests, which I sent from my email today. And so we expect full compliance, because I can tell you personally, this is not the first time that I've come to a New Haven Board of Education meeting. This is not the first time. In fact, I've been contacted by at least a dozen parents that have had issues specifically with Conti West Hills Magnet School. The time of obfuscation is over. And I'll turn it to my client, Ms. Nelson, for her comments. Thank you.
The next speakers are Tiffany Nelson, Rodney Nelson, and then Florence Cord.
Before I begin, can I ask a question, just so I know how to proceed?
Sure.
Can my husband defer to me? He signed up.
Can
For
he
his
go
time?
in front? Sure.
No, after me, can I take his time after he signed up as well?
It's actually 3 minutes per participant.
Per person, yes.
So he can speak for 3 minutes and you can speak for
mhm.
3 minutes.
And you can speak for
Ms.
3
And
minutes as well.
Ms. Caldwell can speak for 3 minutes.
I have all the notes, and so I guess I'll have to go off the top of my head. As you know, my name is Tiffany Nelson. I am a New Haven resident and a taxpayer, a former student and a current teacher in the New Haven public school system, and most importantly, a proud parent of an amazing 9-year-old child who attends schools in New Haven. I am here to expose the corruption that exists in New Haven public school system by sharing horrific events that have occurred at Fairhaven K-8 and Conti West Hills to cover up for the inappropriate acts of school staff and leadership, as well as school district leaders. Over a year ago, when I refused to take on any more administrative duties at my school during my free period, I was targeted. Shortly after that, just before I went on FMLA, I was given an inappropriate directive by the assistant superintendent of school to report to DCF in order to cover up from my school leaders who failed to report the horrific acts that happened to students over 2 weeks prior. When I was given this directive, my union told me to do it and then grieve it. I'm sad to say, but that's all the union ever did for me. They deterred me from speaking up and protected the person who harmed my child. I reported to DCF and I exposed them. Since then, I was retaliated against, humiliated in team meetings. Kids were dumped into my classroom. I was defamed by my defamation of character with students, teachers who I have awesome relationships. Unknowingly to me, shortly after, my child began to be targeted by her teacher. She was humiliated for no apparent reason. When I spoke to the teacher, she couldn't give me an answer. She didn't even want to talk to me. She sent me to the principal. Went to the principal, we had a meeting. In this meeting, the teacher initially denied all allegations. And then when I asked her if we asked the student teachers and my child and the other students, who would they agree with? She began to admit all of the acts in front of the principal. The principal did nothing, did not hold her accountable. And 6 weeks later, I get a call a parent comes up to me after school. Unknowingly to me, we think things got better. My child her good deed was taken and she was framed for committing a crime by her teacher. Not my word against hers. The victim's parents came to me because my child became too afraid to speak up any longer. She was still being humiliated for months. The principal knew about it, but she told me she didn't report because she was afraid to go to the assistant superintendent who forced her to change reports for months. She apologized to us, and for weeks she promised she was going to hold them accountable. She manipulated us based on past trauma my child had from being bullied and asked us not to go to DCF or the district. Eventually, things kept getting worse until my child was afraid to go to school. And so we knew we had to report the teacher and the principal. We went to the mayor. He knows about it. The entire board knows about it. And it went on and it continued. No one would listen to me. I didn't ask anyone to believe me. I said, hear me, listen to me. I was told, follow the protocols. So I went back to the superintendent, who there was a possible conflict of. She inappropriately gave it to this assistant superintendent who she knew was targeting me.
Time.
I'll be back.
Madam Chair, I'm gonna ask someone else to take minutes for this. This is a family that's very close to me, and I don't want to be accused of any kind of bias. So could someone else take time the rest of it?
Sure.
I respectfully
Sure.
ask, I've been
Mr.
waiting for
Wilcox,
months
can
to be
you-
heard.
Can you?
You guys have been
take a-
ignoring me. I would love to have my husband's minutes. I deserve it. I've been ignored for months.
He can speak for 3 minutes.
That's the best you can do for me. When you guys have been ignoring me, everybody up here, you got the notes. No, God has my answer. God has my answer. But here's the other part of it. At the end of it, no, I'm clear on what I need to do, but I just want to know who I'm dealing with because you guys willingly allowed my child and put her in harm's way. Superintendent, you were promised that she wouldn't be safe and she was targeted and you ignored me. And then you refused to allow her to be transferred.
Madam Chair,
She was intimidated by people,
Dr. Joyner?
intimidated.
I'm
So these
gonna
are not
ask
my
you,
words, there's cameras. And so I'm
try to
gonna go
restore
now because I don't
some
want
of
them
the,
to see. But at the end of the day, we
order to
know
this,
the
and
truth.
I'm gonna respectfully request that for the remainder of the time that the Caldwells are there, that someone else keep the minutes. I'm too close to them.
Mr. Wilcox is going to take the minutes.
All
Mike,
right, thank you.
take time, yes.
I know I'm not, that's why I'm speaking for all children. But we knew what was going on and you stood by and you allowed it. And so now my 9-year-old child has suffered tremendously for months. I never asked anyone to believe me, but no one would even listen to me. And then when I was given the opportunity to advocate for my child, the superintendent inappropriately forced me to do so in front of the person who targeted me. The superintendent didn't know. I had to tell all the lies and the unlawful things. So they lied to DCF. The DCF report that we have is about me, not what we reported. Lies and harassment. So we reported the teacher and the principal. They allowed the principal to report the teacher. We reported the assistant principal. When she continued to fail, she banned us from the building. She lied in a DCF report and to police. These are facts, I have it all. Facts. She misled them, said I harassed the teacher when we have evidence. We've been nothing but kind and gracious because that's who we are. That's who she raised me to be. But at the end of the day, even when people didn't deserve it, we gave them what they couldn't give my child, dignity and respect. She deserves it. And even when we finally forced them to take her out of the building, they still violated her rights by telling everyone where she was going. Couldn't even give her peace then. And now currently in my building, former and present assistant principals and principal are targeting me as we speak. Our life has been a living nightmare because of the acts and inaction of this board, the mayor, the assistant superintendent, the principal of Conti, the former assistant principal at Fairhaven, the current principal at Fairhaven, and the current assistant principal at Fairhaven. I don't need anyone to believe me. I just needed to be heard. I've tried every remedy. I went through the steps just to get pushed down and to be ignored, to be ignored. We've contacted the State Department of Education and they are investigating as well. My child and every child in this district, my family and every teacher deserves dignity. I still went to work every day. Every day, my child couldn't go to school because she was afraid. But I was there listening to the superintendent talking about the obstacle she went through. And when we met, I said to her, your staff can't be an obstacle to my child. So in addition to this, the superintendent acknowledged wrongdoing of all of her staff. In the meeting, it was an answer prayer from God. I promised to hold everybody accountable. We would have never sent my child back into the Conti lion den. She was a proud Conti lion, but we didn't know we were sending her to lions. They stalked my child. Follow her. The teacher had been promoted. We thought she was going to be in the classroom on a different floor. Away from my child, she was promoted and doesn't have a class. Everywhere my child went, she went. She blocked her entrance to her seat. She blocked her entrance to the line, blocked her exit to the door, appeared at her specials, standing up against the wall aimlessly, just staring to intimidate my child. A cafeteria worker who had humiliated my child in the past, somehow her child was placed again in my child's class against the agreement that we had in 2023 with the principal. But this was her act to retaliate against us for reporting all of them. And in doing so, this parent now had access to my child once again. She went up to my child in the
Ma'am, we really do have to move on. If your husband is going to speak and then Ms. Caldwell, we can move on that way. But at this point, you've had double the time allotted for each person.
I really should have
we
been given
really
time
do.
months ago to talk to all of you.
And
So
I
the
will
fact-
ask,
and
I
I'm
will
just saying,
ask
I'm gonna
Dr.
be
I will
quiet.
ask Dr. Negron to get a staff person to speak with you. Or for her to speak to, but
Who
we
did that? I
have,
spoke to
we,
her.
This is a
And she
board
promised
meeting.
to
We
fix it,
have to
so we
move
don't need
on.
to talk anymore. I'm gonna leave,
Okay,
but we're past that point. When I say we followed every protocol,
we do have to
I'm
move
just
on.
letting you
Ms.
know that we don't need to talk
Understood.
to her now. We need you guys to act
Understood.
and follow all district policies, state mandates, state and federal laws today.
Understood.
Today.
But we need to, we need to
I'm
move
just,
on.
I'm just want to
So
be
that the
clear.
next person can speak. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. There are many of you in the room that know me. You know my reputation. You know what I stand for. My name is Florence Caldwell. I have been an active, avid supporter of the New Haven Board of Education for over 50 years, dating myself. And I have always advocated for every child, every teacher, every person that's a part of the New Haven Board of Education, and for the things that are happening to my daughter and my granddaughter. It is unacceptable. You know, I raised my daughters to be strong, proud, honest, and truthful. And if we as the Caldwell and Nelson family are going through these things, imagine what parents that don't know their rights, what they are going through. Those of you that know me, you know I'm a crybaby, but it comes so easy when my family is in the situation that we are in. It's been so stressful. I've lost weight. Can't eat. I have not been to a New Haven Board of Education meeting since the last one before the pandemic started. But I always tune in through YouTube. But I felt the need, and I felt the word that, you know, God is telling me that you need to be there to show your daughter, my son-in-law, and my granddaughter, who is an amazing 9-year-old, that all before she even started school, couldn't wait to start school. She was looking forward to the new school year. We had an opportunity to meet with the superintendent, I think maybe 3 days before, I think that must be my time, 3 days before the Board of Ed meeting. The superintendent assured us we're gonna make things right. The district failed your child, but we're gonna make it right. What we can start by doing now, we need to get Caprice back into school safe. We talked about it with Caprice. She was happy. I can't. She was happy to be ready to go back to school. Caprice, or my granddaughter, has been an honor student from pre-K 3 and now a third grader. But that love of school that she has, we saw it dwindling. But when we had that meeting with,
Ms. Caldwell, that was time. And the timer went off.
okay, I'm just gonna say one last
Sure.
thing. When we had that meeting with the superintendent, we left that meeting so happy, so positive because we were assured that things was gonna change, but they did not change. Thank you.
I just want to apologize for getting upset. That's not who I am, but I am frustrated. All this happened only because I stood up for other students and my child and other kids at Conti. No one can say I've done anything wrong. My hands are clean. And I want to
Ma'am,
keep that clear.
ma'am, that was time. Thank you. Dr. White?
Our next speaker is Eva Waters.
I take a deep breath, guys.
Okay, I'm back on, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
So how many times have you guys heard me come up here and say the same thing, right? Wow. But anyway, I'm a passionate parent and education advocate in the New Haven Public Schools District. Despite numerous attempts to voice my concerns to the local Board of Education regarding their unresponsiveness to parent complaints and failure to adhere to district policies and state and federal regulations, I have not received a satisfactory response. I've urged everyone to familiarize themselves with the policies outlined in the board's bylaws and district policies, starting with Series 1000, which the Board of Education must follow, even though they are dated 6 to 29 years old. Despite my efforts to communicate these concerns with the board, I have received no acknowledgement or resolution. As a result, I am contemplating taking legal action and filing a complaint with the state to hold the board accountable for its lack of response to its total obligations to the district and adherence to policy. The board addressed these issues to ensure the best educational experience is for all students in the district. Now imagine, I made it my business to get here tonight and did not even know what I was walking into. I have come to this board over 11 years talking about policy. If you take the moment, I dare everyone in this room to go up on nhps.net and look at the policies. You're going to see 1999, you're going to see 2018, you're going to see 1995. But through my research as an educational advocate, I have found the solution for us. If you're interested in filing a state complaint along with me, if you're interested into a civil, a class action lawsuit, you may reach out to me because that is my next step. You guys are failing our children. You only want to come up here and call out names when it's good. But the moment we come out here and call out the names when it's bad, you want to shut us down. But what do we teach our kids? You can't have good without bad, and you can't have bad without good. So if we're going to stop calling names, let's stop calling names altogether because you can't have it both ways. I have come to this district over and over and over again for my son, as well as other kids that I've advocated for. You guys have done nothing. But now, in order for us, we could talk about contracts, but let's talk about working together for the sake of the teachers, the students, and parents. Let's shut this board down once and for all, connect and get to the state because that is our rights. Enough. Enough. Shut them down together.
Madam President, that concludes those signed up.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. We will move on to the action items on the agenda. The first being the approval of the board meeting minutes of our September 23rd meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the September 23 meeting minutes. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough. Yarborough's not on. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. Next item, Dr. Negron, is the personnel report.
Good evening, Chair. I'm hereby asking for approval of the personnel report that is before you.
Is there a motion to approve the personnel report? Mr. Wilcox?
I move we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Wilcox. Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. Next item is memorandum of understanding with Yale University.
Yes, I move that we approve item 3.04, the memorandum of understanding with Yale University to provide the Yale Teaching Fellowship Program to support teacher recruitment and professional development efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the memorandum of understanding with Yale University. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Ms. Downer, Ms. Downer,
She's
Yes.
muted.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. Next item.
So in regards to item 3.05, I move that we approve the grant of easement by the city to the Regional Water Authority for the purpose of installing and maintaining public water supply infrastructure on the grounds of Ross Woodward Classical Studies Magnet School in substantially the form attached hereto.
Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the Regional Water Authority easement. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So that item passes. And finance and operations.
As I move to the rest of the finance and operation items, is there anything anyone would like to move separately? Hearing none, there is one item that we are going to move separately, and that is I move that we table item 5.01, the memorandum of understanding with the city of New Haven regarding salary reimbursement for the positions of assistant corporation counsel, BOE labor, and staff attorney.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, any discussion? Seeing none. We will vote to table F&O item 5.01. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that item passes.
And then I'll make the motion for all the rest of the items. So I move that we approve the 3 abstracts, the remaining memorandum of understanding, the 10 agreements, the 6 purchase orders, and the 1 contract as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the remaining F and O items. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Ms. Colon?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so those items pass. And so we move on to the students' report.
So the students report for today is specifically looking at our culture and climate committee meetings that we had. We had 2 meetings in the past week. And so a little bit of background, when we started off the meeting, we focused on the narratives within the schools, the stereotypes about schools from an outsider's perspective, symbols within schools, and then we asked the committee members what are ways they think they can improve culture.
So one question that we asked is, what is a stereotype you hear about your school? And this was gathered many responses where there were many fights. People are very segregated racially or educationally. Rundown infrastructure, and that's pretty much.
Just a note about okay, no, we can keep going. All right, I can elaborate later. But when students were asked about how do they view their own school, they said it was very welcoming. But small schools did consistently mention that they felt unseen compared to larger schools. Often people said that their bathrooms were run down and broken, and students at Cross felt segregated in a way that they felt there was a gap between them and students of others' cultures. I think it was based off the language gap. I need to specify that. And a lot of people mentioned that they wanted a stronger student body in the district as a whole, as well as many people mentioned good programs like Sound School's scuba diving program, Wilbercross's amazing AP program, Careers nursing program. A lot of these things people take pride in, especially their sports teams.
A question that was, what things contribute to your school's culture? A lot of people said satisfaction between their teachers and students, having access to opportunities. Quote that we got was, if the building is trash, then we might as well treat it as trash. How students perceive their school, and also social media plays a big role into our schools.
So a big part of the meeting that I found is that there's definitely a disconnect between the Board of Education members and the students themselves. A lot of students consistently feel that they're not given attention, whether small or large. Small schools feel like they're not given attention because they're too small, and large schools feel like they're not given attention because their schools are too big and they don't have enough resources for them. Yeah, some schools also mentioned that they think the Board of Education has money, but they don't want to spend it. And other people mentioned that physical changes within the school itself, as a result of not seeing a lot of physical changes within the school itself, they feel like the Board of Education isn't doing anything. Next slide. So I feel like the major thing I want to point out is that a lot of these things are not the case. Obviously, the Board of Education pays attention to its schools, but I feel like a lot of students just don't feel a connection to the Board of Education. When they think of the Board of Education, it's very misty. It's not very clear. So my suggestion as a start is to have a more direct connection with students within their schools from the Board of Education, specifically as an institution. And this will allow students to kind of bridge this empathy gap, which automatically allows or automatically just blames the Board of Education without a lot of backhand knowledge. It's, just gaining more knowledge about the Board of Education through a strong connection. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions or comments for student board members?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Dr. Joyner?
I'd like to ask the students, what does a connection between the board and students look like? I know a lot of board members do go out to schools. They meet with students. They go to student events. They support them at sports events. When they're getting awards, they're there. They often give them resources themselves. So I'd like to know what that looks like, particularly when you have 7 board members and several thousand students.
Well,
in fact, one more thing. In fact, I can't think of a stronger connection than when one of our board members was the graduation speaker at Hill House and got a standing ovation. And when we all, and I'm really not being defensive, but when we all go to football games and we go to other events, both at the elementary and high school. So I'd like to know that. And I'd also like to advise you that it's a two-way street too. Thank you.
Right. Obviously, right. I mean, some board members do go to football games. I'm not saying that they don't, but I mean, when you go to a football game, do they know that you're a Board of Education member? Does everyone in the crowd know that? The players, I'm sure, don't know that. And that's what I'm trying to get at. As an institution, you guys, well, okay, maybe some.
Dr. Joyner, hold on.
I'd like to talk to you about that offsite so we can reach a solution, because you and I have a good relationship.
Right. But my point is that as an institution, the members of the Board of Education, then it's not very clear to a lot of students. They're not even very aware of what's going on within the Board of Education themselves, Board of Education itself. Like, students need to be educated with the Board of Education in relation to the state. They need to be educated with the Board of Education in relation to the city. In general, they just need to know what's going on. And so they won't just consistently just blame the Board of Education for random things like the Board of Education has money, but they're not willing to spend it on us.
Okay, just one more point. The reason that that the city created a way for students to be represented on the board so that the students could also be a direct connection to their peers and help them understand things like that. We envision having seminars and all kinds of other events where the students on the board could be a linkage to their peers and also invite board members when necessary. So we probably everybody needs to take a look in the mirror. And,
well, I'm not saying that.
Don't get defensive. I'm not trying
to get defensive.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to give you some feedback. If we want to solve the problem, then we need to create opportunities and structures for board members to come in contact beyond the ones that we do now, because we visit schools and we go to all the graduations. We don't just do football games. We go to talent shows and all. So just give us a way in which we can do this, and we'll respond in time. We'll tell you what we think students can do to improve the situation too.
Well, I feel like in general,
Dr. Joyner, go ahead, Mr. Musser.
I feel like in general, one of the things we can do is open more positions or leadership positions within the Board of Education itself to students and really try to broadcast it very widely. The SEL, the learningship, the social emotional learning leadership internship that I was offered is a great internship, and you really are connected to the Board of Education that way. You're directly connected to Monica Abbott, who works in the Board of Education, but that's only 8 paid positions for 20,000 students. On top of that, I'd also like to say that I'm only connected with high schoolers. I'm not connected with middle schoolers. Every month I meet with maybe 5 high schoolers per high school from the student council. And that's not even all the students, right? For example, Hill House doesn't even have a high school. So in our monthly meetings, we don't even have every single high school attending, much less every single middle school. So to that point, I'm thinking something like we either have students in every single school who have a leadership position from the Board of Education as a resource to understand what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Musser. Any further questions or comments for Mr. Musser? Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, just to our student board member colleagues, if there were meetings or things that you would like some of us to be at specifically, sometimes we're not aware of when the best times to be someplace. So if there are something that people want us at, please let us know. And if there are meetings that you all would like to organize, like a listening meeting or something for the board with students, I would request through the superintendent that somebody help facilitate that so that that could happen to address some of the things that our student members are bringing up right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. No president's report at this time, so we'll move on to teaching and learning.
We have a meeting. We have a meeting tomorrow. We don't have a report, other than the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Joyner. Superintendent's report, Dr. Negron. Sorry, I checked you off.
Not a problem. We do have, actually, I have two updates that I want to bring forth today. The first one is, as you know, September 30th came and it's gone. It's the end of our ESSER grant funding. But we wanted to take an opportunity today to speak about exactly what it was that we were able to do with the federal funds. And for that, we are going to walk you to a presentation by our Assistant Superintendent Red Hannons, who you may recall when the grant was first received years ago during the pandemic. She led a lot of the efforts of identifying exactly what that application would be composed of. And she was instrumental in working through all the pieces along with our Chief Financial Officer for the district. We have also invited 3 of our principals to join us today, so they can also offer some testimony related to where those investments went. So that is going to be the first part of my report, but I also have a second part. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Red Hannons.
Good evening, board. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you. As Dr. Negron stated, our ESSER funds, the timeline ended September 30th for all funds to be obligated. And so I'll ask the board this evening to go on a journey with me a little bit back in time so we can think about what was happening at the moment, what was urgent at the moment. As we know in education, what's urgent, what's needed changes. It's fluid. So what may be urgent today may be a little different from what we found was urgent at the start of the pandemic. So Dr. White, if you can take us through. So we received in New Haven Public Schools $126 million, $240,475 in federal pandemic relief funds. There was a national emergency that occurred. Some of you may remember, the date is etched in my mind, March 13th, 2020. And as you can see, purposely, I selected a laptop in this photo, purposely, because what was urgent was to ensure our students stayed connected. And we made sure we could accomplish that. The breakdown of our grants, we received a CARES grant from August 31st, 2020 to September 30th, 2022. What you'll notice is a gap because the national emergency occurred March 13th. And so we had to pour our funds that we had in the district to ensure our kids were connected. And from there, we were able to reimburse. Then we received another wave of funds, ESSER 2, This funding came in January 5th, 2021, and all funds had to be expended by September 30th, 2023. And that was in the amount of approximately 37.7 million. And we'll talk a little further about all the grants ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And then we received ARP ESSER, which was approximately $80 million, a little bit more. We received those funds January 17th, 2022, until all funds had to be obligated by September 30th, 2024. So the CARES grant, let's look at the CARES grant. The CARES grant was about $8.5 million. This was our Let's Get Connected, Let's Plug In grant. As you can tell, we spent roughly 4.3 million. So a little bit more than half of this grant was spent on Chromebooks. It was spent on laptops. It was spent on iPads at that time. We also used the CARES grant to continue to pay our substitutes, our part-time staff, because we know they weren't coming to work. And those, if they don't come to work normally, they're not paid, but we still continue to pay them. We still continue to pay our bus monitors as well. And we know we had to also, our custodians were coming every day to work during that time. And so we had to continue maintaining our services. We spent some money in professional development, really a little bit, if you really think about it, 3%, but that was for us to learn how to teach in a remote setting. And so that really kind of talks about the CARES grant. I'll go in deeper on the other two grants. So for ESSER 2, when ESSER 2 came, federal government gave us priority areas. And we had 4 priority areas: academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration and recovery. We had another priority area on SEL, school safety, emotional well-being, family and community connections, as well as remote learning, staff development, and the digital divide. Because believe it or not, with this grant, although we spent a lot from CARES grant on technology, we also had to increase technology for our staff because our staff technology was antiquated as well. And so a huge chunk of money we still were spending on devices. As you can see noted on the bottom of this slide, 8.7 million was utilized from the 37 million on teachers. We hired 72 grades 1 to 3 teachers to reduce class size because we felt that we didn't know enough about COVID and we wanted to keep our students, our staff, our families safe. And so we added more teachers in grades 1 to 3. We also expanded our extended learning opportunities. That was after school and summer school. We spent $8.6 million thinking about just, and this is just coming from ESSER 2, on those extended learning opportunities. Some of you may remember, we went from 6 summer school sites to 12. We doubled in size. And with that comes funding that must be expended in those particular areas. And then I highlighted, just as you're on this journey with me, remember the water bottle filling stations and the conversation around, hey, we need to turn the water fountains on. Well, we can't do that. We're not sure. So we converted in all of our buildings, water fountains to become water bottle filling stations. And that was 91,000. And so I talk about what was urgent and what was on our minds during those times. We can see the sense of urgency and the breakdown is there. You see the amount of money spent in full-time employees. 32% of the grant was spent in full-time employees. And that's where you're looking at our grades 1 to 3 teachers, but also some other employees that I'll note in a minute. And so some of our highlights from ESSER 2. Besides the 72 teachers, we started really taking a hard look at what are our systems of supports for students. We know during this time, and I'll remind you, when we received ESSER 2, our doors were still closed, while many doors were still open across the state. In our district, our doors were closed. So students still were learning in a remote setting. And even after we brought our students back, it was a hybrid setting. And our students were able still to learn from home. And so we had teachers teaching online and in person at the same time. And so we had to provide those supports. With that, we still were able to put together leadership institutes. We also had promising practice grants. These were grants that we gave to teachers if they had some innovative idea that they wanted to implement within their schools. And we still have some teachers across the district that are implementing some of those practices as a result of these promising practice grants that we implemented. And we know we hired one of our manufacturing pathway teachers because we were still committed to remaining career connected and growing our career connected pathways. We hired 5 care coordinators. We recognized the needs in our community were very acute at that time, and we needed to increase our levels of support for our students. We hired restorative coaches. We know that socially our students weren't as connected, so they weren't displaying some of the most desirable behaviors when they re-entered into school. And so we wanted to make sure we dealt with our students from a restorative lens and not a punitive one. Our family academies, and we extended our professional learning opportunities. We also hired counselors, social workers, psychologists. We implemented, and many of you see if you're in our buildings, a lot of SEL curriculum within our schools as well. We ordered a lot of SEL curriculum materials. We offered up wellness opportunities for our staff. We didn't just focus on our students. Our staff was very much included in the opportunities that were being offered, not just from a district level, but from a school-based level as well. We continue to purchase PPE because that was important as well. And here you'll start seeing this is where we're hitting on some of our control systems upgrades and our HVAC systems as well, and our CO2 sensors. We implemented our data dashboard, and we got a data dashboard in New Haven Public Schools to help us better understand the data that was out there. We give a lot of assessments, but we didn't have a central way to look at data, but not just assessment data, but also looking at behavioral data as well, and attendance data. As we know, our chronic absenteeism rate exploded during the pandemic as well. And so we needed to make sure we were making decisions that were data-driven. We continue with headphones. One of the things that we noted, and our teachers immediately messaged up to us, was that, you know what? My student is learning in an environment where their brother is sitting next to them, or another family relative is sitting next to them. And so they need headphones. They need to be able to plug in. And so what did we do? We ordered headphones for our students as well, because those were urgent needs at the time. We ordered document cameras for all teachers so that their screen, when they could project out, they can also project to the kids that were still at home. And so those kind of quickly go over some of the highlights for ESSER 2. Now, ARP ESSER. ARP ESSER, as stated earlier, it was awarded in January 17th, 2022. All funds had to be obligated. Happy to report all funds were obligated. We're not giving anything back. New Haven will not give any money back, as we obligated all of our funds by September 30th, 2024. And this grant was a little bit over $80 million. Our priorities: learning acceleration, family and community engagement, SEL, technology, and building safe and healthy schools. And so let's talk a little bit about ARP ESSER. We spent 13.4 million was spent on facility expenditures. And we'll talk a little bit later about what that looks like. But roughly, that was about 17% of the grant was spent on facility expenditures. 7.4 million of the grant was spent on part-time staff. It was spent on part-time staff. If you can recall, one of the things that we did, which was very unique to New Haven, was that we gave money directly to our schools. We said this wasn't all going to come top down. And so part of our commitment was to ensure that schools had say in how this money was spent. And if you can, on the top right-hand corner, we also recognize we engaged 700 stakeholders in ESSER 2, but for this one, we knew we needed a broader audience. We engaged over 5,500 stakeholders in selecting the investments for our ESSER funds. Now, I know there may be some conversation around who did we talk to? We talked to internal stakeholders. We talked to external stakeholders. We talked to any and everyone that was available. We made ourselves available on the district level. We made ourselves available on the school level. Everyone was required to talk to stakeholders. We talked to our students. We talked to our parents, community members to see how we should invest $80 million, and all had a say in how we would leverage these dollars. And it was important, once again, for it not to be just top down, and that schools had say at the school level as well. And you'll hear from a few of our principals this evening. We also, if you can recall, invested $7.2 million for staff retention incentives, right? I mentioned that at another meeting and everyone said, oh, yes, we gave retention bonuses to staff. And we wanted to do that because at a time we recognized our teachers were going above and beyond, but not just our teachers, it was all staff. It was our administrators. It was our para-educators. And so if you were a staff member in New Haven Public School, you received a bonus, a retention bonus. And so that's what we allotted to our staff as well. And you can see the breakdown of how funds were expended for our ESSER as well. And I would just note again that when we look at it, we spent 7.2% in overtime fees. And we'll look at that. That was, and who that was for. All right. So learning acceleration. Here are some of our highlights. We know we leveraged these dollars. We would not have been able to make changes within our curriculum at the pace that we made it without these ARP ESSER funds. And so we implemented new core programs aligned to national and state standards in literacy, math, and science. We continued with our extended learning academies. We implemented a bridge program this past summer, if you can recall, for our 8th graders going into 9th grade. We hired 10 bilingual teachers, recognizing that our demographics were changing in NHPS and we needed to acquiesce to the changes of our student population. 6th period, we asked a lot of teachers, please, we have vacancies. Please teach a 6th period class for us. And they did, and we're thankful for it. Our credit recovery program, you know, we've expanded our college and career pathways. Right now we have 5 in the district. Our college and career pathways work was funded solely by ESSER. We didn't have any other funding sources going into that. So when we talk about the manufacturing and the education and the HCAP, please understand all funding came through ESSER for those. Field trips, we expanded our field trips and we continued with professional learning. We carried over our care coordinators because we saw that there was a definite use for them. We carried over our restorative coaches. We hired attendance coaches to address our chronic absenteeism rate. We expanded our community partnerships and we added some parent liaisons as well. And you'll see some schools gave money to their student councils
so that their student councils can do more meaningful work within their schools. For priority 3, we carried over the support staff, the school counselors, the social workers, and the psychologists. We hired part-time student support staff, so some of the behavioral support that you may see in schools. We also supported wellness activities for staff. If you can recall, we had a partnership with NHFT with Educators Thriving. And we had wellness opportunities for our teachers, solely for them to participate in focus groups. This money came directly from ESSER. One of the biggest things, and you'll see visibly in the schools right now, is that we have sensory rooms in mostly all of our schools. And that is because we made a focus effort to ensure that we purchase flexible seating in our schools for students. Now, I'll tell you, when I do my walkthroughs, I like sitting in the flexible seating because I get to move around a little bit. That's neither here nor there. But so I'm just like the kids. But these are some of the investments that we made, and we continue to purchase SEL curriculum materials. You'll see for priority 4, we needed a part-time tech teachers in our schools, right? We were using our librarians. Our librarians said, we're a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of work, the volume, because now we have so much technology in our buildings. And so we hired part-time technology staff. We also hired staff to work in the summertime to help clean the technology as well. And we were still purchasing laptops and Chromebooks, audio, visual equipment, instructional software, and continuing to purchase headphones. Finally, for priority 5, building infrastructure, HVAC systems, roofing repairs. Our most recent POs dealt with our pools and making sure that our pools can get up and running. So we obligated funds for that. Outdoor learning spaces. We leverage these dollars as a way to, learning can occur beyond the 4 walls of the school. And so we put in outdoor learning spaces in many of our schools. We buddy benches and tables you'll see around the district. And so coming back to overtime, custodial and security overtime, those things were needed. That's how we were able to leverage ESSER to allow the custodians and security to work overtime, was using our ESSER dollars. And we also use ESSER for substitute teachers as well. And so I know I have Principal Perone behind me now. He's going to address how Edgewood specifically leverage ESSER. But before Principal Perone comes, I want to tell you the intentionality on the 3 principals selected this evening. When I first came before you with ESSER, Principal Perone, Principal Blue Ellis, and Principal Morales were the 3 principals I had present their ideas on how their schools were going to leverage the funds through a collaborative process with their staff, their parents, their students. And so I asked them to come tonight to give you a report on how they actually leverage the funds. And so here we have Principal Perone.
It is great to be back, especially in person. I saw how many slides were before me from Ms. Redhand, so I just wanted to make sure to give her the floor, and I enjoyed staying in my seat during that time. But thanks for the overview. So I'm here to just share some of the ways that we actually spent the money that we got. Every dollar is so crucial in education these days, so I'm sure people want to see the actual work that we did. This is just an overview of the ways that some of the funds was spent. So I can go into more detail, certainly. And I'm not here to read to, can you go to the next slide, Dr. White? I'm not going to read every part of the table to you, but at this time, Edgewood had 3 goals. Essentially, we wanted to celebrate identity in every shape of the word, have an intentional focus on literacy, and increase experiential learning opportunities. And so I think we achieved those things given the ways that we spent the money and utilized it. So first we We made sure to have two very dedicated tutors that were able to work for 34 and a half hours per week. That unfortunately has led to, part of this is going to be explaining what life is like now. And so this year, we had a 65% decrease in the amount of funding that we could supply our tutors. So there is that much of a reduction in face-to-face time. But we also expanded our ECHO program, which is something that essentially replaced or emphasized TAG in a way that expands the enrichment for all students. We also included and expanded the local guest artist portion of that program. We provided social emotional support with the Miss Kendra program. All of these things, in order to sustain, is requiring that we have creative solutions. And I, again, can go into more detail about what that means, but we are definitely committed to keeping as much of these programs going as we can. The Miss Kendra program, unfortunately, is no longer in existence, so we had other ways to increase our social emotional learning. So our social worker asked for an intern, and so that expanded our social worker services. We're also sending a lot of staff to the mental health, first aid, PD that's being offered. Technology, Ms. Red-Hannons did speak to, so proud to say that our devices are still in use. I did look up the lifetime expectancy of Chromebooks, and so we still have some time before we have to start buying new ones, and so we are in good shape right now. And something really exciting that we were able to install is a high ropes course in our gym that has impacted countless kids at this point and has empowered them to do more and be more and grow every day, as we say. The next slide are the fun things because they're the pictures, and we can speak to those more individually. But the top left-hand corner, you can see that's an example of some academic support where the funds were put to use. That's really where the magic happens. Anyone who thinks otherwise needs to get back into the classroom. That small group time with a dedicated educator is really where amazing things do happen. The next picture to the right is the power of a circle. The amount of restorative practice that we do to help prevent suspensions and repair harm, but also build community is something that we value. The slide to the right shows a diverse group who is performing at one of our, essentially it's an open mic night, but it's every other Friday morning. We call it Cafe Edgewood. But this is really where students feel empowered to build their confidence and to be able to get up in front of people and perform just about whatever they want to perform. The bottom left-hand corner is an example of one of our ECHO classes. This one's being led by a local artist, T. Montgomery, showing our students how to build fashion sense, both in terms of learning how to sew, but also build their ideas into reality, doing some sort of a fashion show. And the two images to the right show the examples of the student empowerment, the ways that kids overcome their fears, work as a team, and go higher, not just in life, but on a rope or attached to a rope. That is everything that I have. Thanks for your time.
Next, we'll have Principal Blue Ellis. I believe she is on virtually.
Good evening. First, I want to just say that I'm proud of the district, and I want to thank the Board of Education and our central office leaders for how they enabled us to rebound from the pandemic. We used the pandemic as an opportunity to examine our practice and to improve upon what we do. Site-based allocation is appreciated, and so I'm going to share what ESSER has done. So one of the things, and if you could just excuse me, just I think this is better. Okay. So one of the things that is a trademark of ESSER is our college and career readiness. And so we were able to use our ESSER funds to purchase instructional software, specifically a program called Find Your Grind, which is modern and engaging and really introduces our students to not just the STEM-themed careers, but in all careers that they might be interested in. We also had other contractual services, a similar program, the Equity Lab. And I have to say, I had a very quiet house up until it was time for my presentation. Now the phone's ringing. So, but the Equity Lab is an organization that allows students to take classes at UPenn, Columbia, Yale, Howard, a variety of colleges and universities in the country. And they offer classes that might not necessarily be offered at our schools. In fact, some of our students took classes at UPenn in personal finance and actually were awarded recognition from UPenn for scoring the highest in those classes. Those early college credits are part of who we are and what we do at ESSEMS. So while we might not be able to continue our partnership with the Equity Lab due to funding costs, we are participating and continue to participate and have even through the pandemic in the New Haven Early College Program, which allows students to take classes at Gateway, Southern, Yale, and also UNH through our partnership with the university. Learning acceleration is another trademark of our school. And so at ESSEMS, we consider all of our students to be gifted. All of our students take engineering. All of our students graduate with physics. Right now, all of our students are taking an AP class in grade 10. So in order to accelerate the learning and keep students interested, not only in our core classes, but in our electives, we hired a consultant and we renamed our department to actually be the New Media and Social Change Department, which is before was our Business and Technology Department. We were the first and only to this date school to offer Masterclass. If you're familiar with Masterclass, it's a platform where anyone who's interested in learning can learn any topic that they want from some of the best people in the industry. So that's in any field from cooking to philanthropy to leadership. And so our students were able to create their own capstone project, and they had subscriptions to Masterclass to extend their learning in a direction that brought them joy and fulfillment and allowed them to demonstrate many of the 21st century thinking skills that we like them to acquire before they graduate. So that allowed us to innovate our curriculum as well as accelerate the learning. It also gave more opportunity for student choice and personalized learning and increased student performance. So we know that there was learning loss for many students during the pandemic, and we wanted them to come back into school by being excited about the opportunities that they had at ESSEMS. In addition to that, we were not able to keep the part-time teacher that allowed us to really expand some of those electives while we were innovating, and we were not able to keep the consultant. We had to reduce our licenses for Masterclass. And then lastly, we heard a lot about the technology gap and the technology divide. So while we still have enough technology in our school, we are not able to allow all grades to have one-on-one computers to go home. This is a major concern, not only to implement the curriculum that we have, but also for state testing. Testing has now moved to be digital. So if we don't have enough technology for our students, that's going to become a challenge later on in the year. So we are really working hard to preserve the technology that we have. And we're trying to also share with our families ways to purchase affordable devices. So the only thing I didn't share in this presentation, the slide that you're looking at, is the trips and the summer programs that were offered by different parts of the ESSER funding. We participated in every opportunity that our district provided in terms of the summer enrichment programs, and those have been invaluable. And we were also able to expand our trips at no cost to families as they were trying to rebound financially from the pandemic. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Principal Blue Ellis. I will present Fairhaven's summary of their ESSER funds. Principal Morales is not able to be with us this evening. And I'll just do a high-level overview. So they were able to add in tutors, expand after-school programming, have Quinnipiac interns there to help support students. Unfortunately, as a result of the money no longer being there, they're no longer able to hire the amount of tutors they hired before. There's going to be delays in after-school programming because it's dependent upon other grants that are not readily available at the start of the year. When thinking about family and community engagement, if you know Fairhaven School, they do a lot of community programs, a lot of partnerships within the school. So they've held a lot of celebrations and expanded them during the ESSER funding, and this strengthened their partnerships. Now they have to rely solely upon Title I funding. And you'll see Fairhaven was given $450,000 in comparison to the other schools, and that's because of the sheer size of Fairhaven. Fairhaven is our third largest school in the district. SEL, they also hired SEL tutors. They also used some of their funding for their sensory rooms and incentives to promote attendance and achievement for students. They're unable to replenish incentives and materials now, limited personnel to support student behaviors as well. Fairhaven is one of our schools that has a partnership with Trifecta for an outdoor community garden and learning space. They were able to put that contract forward this year. However, once the contract runs out this year, they're not sure how they're going to be able to maintain it because the funding is no longer available. And so I thank the principals for sharing their stories with us and giving you that report because they came before you in 2021. So our benefits to the learning community. I think it's important that we take a moment to reflect and think about what were the benefits? Well, we know we boosted our behavioral and attendance support. We enhanced our literacy instruction. We expanded in industry certification and college credit courses. We diversified our classroom libraries. We know we expanded our outdoor learning spaces, and you can see everything, and this is just a snapshot of things that we were able to do as a result of the pandemic relief funds, and this was done through community. This is no one person. Yes, I may be the grant manager, but there's no one person. There were several people that was involved in this work, and I want to give kudos to all of them, and that's people at all levels, whether it was our parents, our students, our teachers, our principals, central office staff. Everyone was involved in achieving these benefits, so kudos to them. But as we turn the page, we recognize challenges do exist, and they centered around sustainability and acceleration. And I'm not going to read this slide verbatim. I have highlighted some statements that I think are worth considering. How do we sustain all the resources and supports now that the funds are not there? What is it going to look like as far as access to multifaceted professional learning? How are we going to get instruments in our classroom, right? Building conditions. How do we remodel, renovate auditoriums? We have resources now, but we're always struggling. We find ourselves that we're always making do with the minimum while expecting maximum results. Let me say that again. We are always making do with the minimum while expecting maximum results. So how we galvanize here and come together to address sustainability for programs that you've heard from our principals that you know because you lived it and you saw it during the time, it's going to be increasingly important to our student and our community success. Last comment I'll leave you with is our most vulnerable families will lack the resources needed to support their children. And that, to me, kind of capitalizes what's the real challenge that we face right now. Because when we talk about tutors, we talk about behavioral supports for our families, we talk about care coordinators, we talk about all of these things to help our families. Those are our most vulnerable families. And we were able to provide supports to them that we no longer can. And so it is truly, truly a challenge. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Negron if she has any last words.
So again, I just wanted to take an opportunity to recap everything that took place. Also in the spirit of full transparency, have the public understand, right, how much the district was able to do with the influx of the federal dollars and also to continue to highlight the challenges that are before us. So I want to thank again Assistant Superintendent Red Hannans for the great work that she did leading and managing that grant. And I do want to thank our principals who took the time this evening to share out their experiences and how they were able to maximize and really look at innovative ways to give unique opportunities to their students in their buildings. And with that, I think we're going to open it up for questions if there are any.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions or comments for staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Wilcox and then Dr. Joyner.
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and it's always great to hear from principals as well. And so thank you all for being part of this. It's great to see, you know, I've been on this board throughout this whole grant process with finance and operations, seeing, you know, the bits and pieces of this coming in and this contract here or this program there. So it's been nice to kind of get a big, broad overview as to, you know, kind of the big categories and some of the, as well as also hearing some of the specific things and some of the results. And I do appreciate also that you all ended and made part of the principal's presentation some of the challenges that are going to come from the lack of this funding. So I do think that it's great that it's we're going to have a good group of people being able to come together to help lobby at the state for have the state to continue to increase and more equitably fund their education so that programs like this that have been proven to work in some of these schools and some of the deficits that we have compared to other districts in terms of number of teachers, number of other staff members, and building infrastructure improvements. So being able to kind of see that, I mean, I couldn't help but think through this where it's like, I don't know how we pay for that now. I don't know how we pay for that now. And the only way to do that is to go where the money is. And so, so I do appreciate that. It's well put together and food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Joyner, and then Dr. Benitez.
Yes, I'd like to give you some feedback on the process, which I thought was perfect. I know because I serve on the teaching and learning committee that you involved everybody that needed to be involved. And you were open to suggestions. I can't say enough about our principals, having been one. It's a lot harder for you guys now than it was for me because I had the community behind me. And we all spoke the same message to children. So there was no way for kids to play educators against each other. And the kids also took care of the school. They didn't vandalize any of those things. I can't think of a better way based on the items that you had and that you spent money on. I can't think of a better way to have spent that money. Mr. Wilcox is always saying this, and I hope he continues, that we cannot continue to serve our children and families as well as we could under stop and start funding. We have in this country, education is the foundation for any well society. It's responsible for producing every type of occupation and profession. You can't be a fireman without a teacher. You can't be a police officer without a teacher. You can't even be a president without a teacher. And hopefully you had a good one so you could be a good president. And education is the most important, other than the family, it's the most important institution in our society. And if we can't come together as a nation and as a state to stop this stop and start stuff and to try to treat schools the way they should be treated and recognize that when you have a school system of children that come from poor, deprived communities that don't speak the language, that don't even speak their native language in a sort of, I don't like to use standard language, but they don't speak the language of intellectual transmission in their native language in often cases. And all it takes is one or two people to not think that you're doing right by them, and it taints the whole system. But you guys are doing a good job. The board is doing a good job with volunteers, and we keep trying to do better. And Dr. I said Dr. Red Hannans. I'd be glad when you get it, so I won't be wrong. You do a great job, and the principals do a great job. And I'm going to give a shout out to both Dr. Tracy and Dr. Negron. Dr. Tracy said that she was not going to spend any ESSER money on positions that once the money was gone, that we had to keep the position. So she was very careful about that in her part of allocations. And then Dr. Negron refined all of that with what she did. And she worked with various groups in the community to do that. So you're doing a great job. Don't get discouraged. Don't let anybody tell you you're not doing a great job. But we could use a better match of our commitment from the people who are critics. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Red Hannons. And as Dr. Joyner, I would love to be able to say Dr. Red Hannons soon. No pressure. But one of the things I want, and I want to thank everybody in the district. I know it was hard work. I know that spending money, although people certainly enjoy the benefits, takes a lot of work because you have to follow certain procedures in order to be able to draw down this money. And so I want to thank you all for doing that. I am wondering, and you don't have to, it could be a rhetoric question. I'm wondering how we use this experience to charge up our fight for fair funding funds allotted. We do have a law that says that every child should have fair funding, but we do not have the funds allotted to us by the state. And so I am wondering how the team would put something together for parents and for community advocates and for ourselves, Board of members, that we could use as a cheat sheet when we go and we testify, and use the experience you had with additional funds. It's again a rhetoric question, and you may or may not answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Okay, see no further questions or comments. Dr. Yarborough? Dr. Yarborough?
Yeah, thank you. Just jumping in last minute to speak, but I want to thank you very much for the comprehensive presentation. I think it's important to do a review of what's happened most recently, to do an autopsy, to do a praise report, to establish what the prayer request is for our next season. But thank you very much for taking the time to walk through. Also, thank you to the teachers present and the teachers not represented tonight who really imagined and dreamed what was possible and invested the resources accordingly. And, you know, I do intend and hope that resources will continue to come in so those dreams don't have to go away, but that we can innovate, but that also the money can come in to make things happen. Specifically, I want to say to Ms. Red Hannons and our district, you know, thank you for your stewardship. Thank you for really looking at first gathering the information and data in terms of what are our priorities, not just what's urgent and making a lot of noise, but I appreciate the strategy behind how you went through this and also how you follow through. And it was very nice just to see examples of how the resources were invested and where we are today. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your work. And Dr. Negron, thank you very much for making this time within this conversation to bring us a report on what has been done. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough.
Board President, if I could, I just want to shout out Juanita Mazik in the finance office. She is the special grants manager. She's been with me. First, it was Linda Hannons, then Juanita. Just want to shout out the finance team for being there, helping to process the purchase orders, getting them through, giving advice. Are we meeting the title? Are we meeting the guidelines? So behind the scenes, the finance team is doing a lot of work. And so I just wanted to publicly acknowledge them.
Thank you, Ms. Red-Hannons. Okay.
So as
Dr.
I
Nadeau?
mentioned, I would have two parts today. So moving up to the second part of my update, Dr. Y is going to be helping me with some slides. But basically today I want to take an opportunity to speak about cell phone-free learning environments. And again, we're very excited that this year we have begun with our implementation of our path to excellence. And in alignment, Dr. Y, if we can move me to slide 3. In alignment with our ongoing efforts to provide our students conducive learning environments that not only benefit them academically, but also socially and emotionally, we will be moving forward with implementation of a cell phone-free policy in all of our K-8 schools. I want to take a moment to speak about the several benefits that we know come about from having cell phone-free learning spaces. We know that we can see improved focus and attention. So again, we know nowadays, like, we're all so distracted by our cell phones. Like, I have 2 everywhere I go. So it becomes a distraction. And we know that students are more likely to concentrate on their lessons and engage fully. It's about having full engagement. If we can assist them in just giving them a few hours of free time away from cell phones. We know that cell phone-free environments, it encourages face-to-face communication. Imagine walking into a space, and I know that when I walk in with my phone, and if I don't know people, it's easier for me to grab my phone and, hey, let me check my emails. But if I don't have my cell phone, I am like forced to like engage and talk to people and even start a conversation with people that I don't even know. So again, this would help our students in developing the important social skills that are so necessary, and also to build stronger relationships. We also know that it increases academic performance. With fewer distractions, students can better absorb information, participate in class discussions, and I'm sure perform well academically. Later on, I'm going to invite one of our principals who has piloted to tell you firsthand what she has been able to see. We also know that it reduces cyberbullying. Limiting cell phone access can help decrease the instances of cyberbullying, because we know during the school day, kids are constantly looking. We know all kinds of traffic that is happening, whether it be on Instagram or TikTok or whatever we want to name it. It just, again, is giving them a few hours out of their day to hobble that away. Also, it promotes healthy habits. A cell phone-free policy encourages students to engage in more physical activities. They can explore their surroundings, and again, participate in habits that have nothing to do with cell phones. Let me tell you, I was away last week at a professional learning, and it was just so nice to have a few hours where I was not looking at my cell phones. And I kept praying that my designee had it all under control, and she did. She took care of all business, but again, it allowed me just to fully engage by being away from the cell phones. We know it also enhances mental well-being. We continue to read about the research around how much students are spending as it relates to screen time. So this could alleviate stress and the anxiety associated with social media, constant connectivity, and it would promote better mental health among our students. It would also increase opportunities for more creative thinking, right? Imagine being in class and often sometimes, okay, let me see what Google has to say about that. It forces, right, without the over-reliance on cell phones for information and entertainment, it will force students to engage in more in creative thinking and solving activities. And last but not least, we know that it will strengthen school culture. This would be a nice way of that we would make a collective commitment to a cell phone-free environment that can foster a sense of unity and share values, right? The values that we share, not only as parents, the values that we share as staff, and the values that we share as students. So I wanted to lift some of the benefits. And also to share with you that implementing these K-8 cell phone-free learning spaces is not new. We have the beauty of the learnings that we have gained for having some pilots in our own district. I heard a lot about what has happened in other districts across the state, but I know that often when we hear about others, we always say, well, that's not our kids. That's not our school. That's not our district. But we have learnings from our own schools and our own children. And last year, the first one to pilot was Barner Environmental Science and Technology Magnet School. And we have Principal Skiba with us today, who's going to share her experience with us, followed by the implementation that happened at King Robinson towards the end of the year last year, and also over at Wexler Grant. So these are 3 schools that implemented last year. And this year, first day of school, Celentano Magnet implemented. The principal was very happy to share that she has not had one physical altercation this year. I hope I'm not jinxing her, because I tend to do that to people. But again, we're talking from the end of August, which was day 1, to today, not one altercation. Okay. We also implemented this year at Bishop Woods, and I believe Troop is like on week 2, maybe week 2 of implementation, because they have also implemented. But with that, I do want to invite Principal Skiba to come to the mic and kind of share a little bit about her experience.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and guests and Board of Ed mentors. So my first year at Barnard, there was a big cell phone, I would say, problem, and I knew I needed to attack it. And so I started researching ways and the best way to do this. And I had been at a concert where this pouch was used. And so I did some research and said that my students need this. They need to be able to detach. I need it. So we saw an increase engaged the next year. We saw way less referrals for the middle school. And I brought a middle school teacher. He's going to speak to it because I can speak to it from the top down from my school, but no better than a teacher that's implementing it. So we're supporting it from the outside in the start, but a teacher seeing the difference as well. So we saw it school-wide. Kids are engaged, as Dr. Nerone said. This literacy scores went up, one of the highest in the district. Kids are talking in the CAF. And I'm not going to say it didn't come with challenges. I had to meet with some parents and come up with different creative opportunities for certain kids that maybe had anxiety over it. I tell them all the time, if there is a problem or a major issue or emergency, these can be cut open easily by your teacher. So you're never without. This is the pouch, it opens easily. They can always access their phone. So to ease some of those anxieties where they came in, I met with parents and I met with teachers. So really getting everyone on board was key. And then meeting with specific people that had a concern in easing those in different ways, different creative ways to make sure everyone felt comfortable and safe, that they weren't without communication, we're just relieving it. And so even some students now turn their phone in, they don't even want the pouch, they just turn it into us. They have an envelope and it's in the office. So we have seen a drastic positive improvement in the culture and academics and engagement. So I'm not going to take up too much time. It's better to hear from the actual ground running from a teacher in the middle school experiencing it as well.
Thank you very much. I'm Dan Croteau, a language arts teacher at Barnard. First, I have to thank Principal Skiba for implementing it and also following through administrative-wise. This policy worked because we had administrators who went back and made sure the policy got followed. When we called the office, administrators came and got the phones. So if we're just going to buy the phone couches and not put in systems to support it, it's not going to work. What was successful was the fact that, again, we told the kids in advance. I think they had a 3 to 4 week notice, and immediately the number of cell phones we saw diminished just from the threat of the cell phone pouch. Once the pouch came in, we had them help us for 2 days, the 100 people, and we had our first physical altercation last year wasn't on first 7-8, was not until Thanksgiving. So we went full first quarter, halfway into and it was right before Thanksgiving when kids get a little rowdy anyway. So we saw a huge drop in physical altercations. Also, drama in general in middle school went down. So today I was dealing with something that started on social media outside of school, but I was able to have conversations because kids are on the phone escalating conflict because I'm able to say, okay, you don't have access to it, so let me talk to people and de-escalate it. Kids are engaged. They're happy with their grades. We did a reset day the other day, and they were looking at their progress reports, and kids were like, I can't wait to show my parents my grades because they are happy to see that. I think the only student this year we had trouble with was a student who was new to Barnard. So the policy went in really pretty quick, and I haven't seen a cell phone since maybe September 4th in my classroom at all. Actually, yeah, until the end of the day when they're unlocked. So physical altercations were down, engagement was up. And again, but you have to have systems in place with supportive administrators who are going to follow through in order to make sure that works and is successful. And kids, what was nice on our end was kids can no longer say, oh, it's my parent texting me, because that kind of has been removed, right? Your parents are told they're not supposed to have cell phones, they're supposed to be locked up. And that all helped to eliminate the issues of cell phones at Barnard.
Any questions?
So with that, I think first, thank you so much for being here tonight and for waiting until now to have this discussion. I truly appreciate that. But again, board, I just wanted for you to have an opportunity to hear, right, from somebody that has been working through this process the longest out of all of those that have implemented thus far, and to just open it up for any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Questions or comments? Mayor Elicker?
Thank you. And they have to stand the whole time, or?
No, they don't have to stand
I felt bad for you. When I was younger, we had a faculty smoking lounge in schools. And now we look back on that and we are like, can you believe we had a faculty smoking lounge in schools, and then students were right outside smoking as well? And I think that we will look back on this time and say, can you believe that we allowed students to have cell phones in schools? I've been, and Dr. Negron will testify to this, been a persistent advocate for Dr. Negron taking this step, and I commend her for doing this. If you're like me, sometimes, and if you have kids, sometimes my kids are like, Dad, stop, put down your phone, it's dinner time. And so it's, in some ways, adults need a little bit of a cell phone check in our schools. The logistics of the Yonder pouches makes this immensely easier because students can keep the cell phone on them. And so there's not the kind of administrative burden that initially, without that technology, we would have confronted, where a bunch of the administration would have to put them in a cubbies or be responsible for them. The students keep them, so that makes it immensely easier. It also helps facilitate teachers not being the police in the schools. And I know that's something that is very important to facilitate teachers doing what they do best, is teaching students and not being out there disciplining all the time. We heard a lot about fights in schools and social media triggering those fights. And as we know, social media is very designed to make students addicted to it. Some data has recently come out about TikTok very deliberately getting kids, if they get 35 minutes of videos, they're more likely to be addicted to it. And I have heard stories of other places that have implemented cell phone free schools of kids talking in cafeterias, the number of fights dramatically decreasing, and the kids being the ones saying, this is a great thing for our schools. Undoubtedly, there will be some challenges and some pushback by some parents, and I think it's helpful that Dr. Negron has talked about implementing this in January, so that there's some time to have community conversations, for principals to have conversations with the parents and students at schools to make sure that we implement it and roll it out in a thoughtful way. I just add one other thing that and just a question for Dr. Negron. We've talked some about potentially rolling out high schools, which I do think is a little bit more challenging, but also very much worthwhile to do. And we've talked about potentially rolling that out in the next academic year. And I wondered if you could share some of your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Elicker. So again, having follow a lot of what's happening in other districts, I like to approach things also understanding, right, that children are at different stages developmentally. And one of the things that I want to do as I continue to think about, what could this possibly look at the high school level? That is where this is work that I'm interested in doing, number one, with the students. I want to make sure that this is something that allows for collaboration with students, collaboration with the staff, building leaders, and everybody around it, right? Want to learn more before we go down that path, knowing, and I want to be very transparent, that I do have an interest in being the first urban district interstate to become a cell phone free learning district. I want to see this as a reality as early as 25, 26. But again, knowing that children are at different levels, this wouldn't be something that I'm saying to you guys, guys, we're doing this tomorrow. You are part of this, you're part of this process. So please anticipate that there'll be lots of discussion that we are going to be having.
Thanks, Dr. And I just had one final thing. So there's a cost associated with this. We got an initial quote from Yonder for the pouches and infrastructure that's around $370,000 to do this district-wide, which sounds like a lot, but with 19,000 students, you can imagine that each one of those pouches, there's a cost, but it's a one-time cost. There's some maintenance costs over the years. The students should give their pouches at the end of the year back to the district so they can be reused the next year, but as you can imagine, some students may lose them. And I will be proposing, because of the district's financial challenges right now, to the Board of Alders that we allocate city funding to get this program running. And I plan on submitting that to the Board of Alders for their upcoming meeting and to start through that process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Negron, does that conclude your
That does finally
report?
conclude my reports for tonight.
Thank you.
May I ask a question or make a comment?
Oh, Dr. Yarborough, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you for bringing the topic forward. And one question or suggestion, another curiosity in terms of the question suggestion for the schools, the middle schools that are doing this right now or piloting this, maybe we can use our survey technology to ask the parents of those students participating to give some feedback and to use those testimonials or questions to kind of facilitate parents speaking with other parents, or caregivers speaking with other caregivers around what's involved in this, and even students speaking with other students. You know, we've done this in our school, and here's what's happened. Here's what the challenges were, but also here is what we gained from this. That might help with conveying what it might be like, and also help with the uptake. And my curiosity is around the high schools. I wonder for each of the schools if there might be a courageous group of student leaders willing to pilot this, willing to come up with the idea, come up with the number of participants, and say, you know, we want to pilot this for a period of time and see what it's like, and then also give that feedback both to the administration and then also to the other students. I know we have a pretty strong set of leaders here on our board, but also specifically the citywide student leadership team, which are representatives from each of the high schools in the district. This might be a topic that they take up, but they also might begin to lead in their schools and say who's willing to be a critical mass for this experimentation. As a scientist, I love experiments, so I'm all for testing it out, but I'm definitely for our high schoolers taking the lead and saying, you know, let us pilot this before there's an official implementation, and maybe we can get feedback on how to structure it and also how to get buy-in and what some of the pitfalls might be and how we can avoid it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Go ahead, because I'm guessing you have a response for Dr. Yarborough.
No.
Okay, then hold on. Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Joyner, and then Mr. Musker.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. Just please advise us if board action is needed at any point for this process. I am supportive of this. I do think as it moves into high schools, there's going to be greater issues. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be the time spent to try to work through some of those issues. And I fully support having community conversations around this. You know, as I read about this in other districts, some of the friction points seem to be more connected to high schools. They're also more aware of the fairness of something. And so I know in some districts, the school staff, you know, if they're also aware that the students aren't able to do that, and so maybe they can minimize their use as well, understanding that our teachers and school staff are parents and you know, have lives that they need to monitor. But we also have students in our high school that are parents and have lives that they need to monitor and are caregivers for other people. So I think that's, I'm glad to hear there's caution so some of those issues can be worked out. I also worry about the scale of things, being able to have communication networks for those folks in a school of, you know, 1,800 students. Those are challenges that are going to need to be worked out. So, but I'm glad to hear things are moving forward. I would also just end with, this also seems like a chance to also make sure that our information literacy curriculum is also educating students about some of these things connected to social media, the addictive nature of it, algorithm-driven, tuned for engagement, and often through conflict, just so you'll continue to view. And so because that's a life skill, and that's something that our school librarians, I know, are already teaching, and some other teachers in various disciplines. So I also would hope that the educational piece is also strengthened as we move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, and then Mr. Musser.
Well, I think it's a great thing. I can't say enough for the people at Barnard. Great school, great leadership. Continued after the other principal moved up to science, and I have a special place in my heart for middle school teachers. If school is preparation for life, then this might be one of the best things we can do, because I've known kids that have gotten fired from jobs because they were using cell phones on the job. And they were warned, and finally the person said, "You're done. I'm not going to have that." And we've got to realize the place of cell phones, because we also have accidents because people are using cell phones at the wrong time. And as Matt and Mayalika talked about the algorithms, the people that have social media platforms, they don't care about you. All they care about is making money. And that's pretty clear when you look at how they set you up to brainwash you So you'll keep coming back looking at the same thing. And then, of course, if you allow them to contact you, they know what your habits are, and they're trying to sell you this, sell you that, and all that. And if we don't deal with the abuse of technology, then this country is going to go down farther. Clearly, it's used to spread lies and misinformation. And a lot of people get their knowledge on Facebook, and that's certainly not the best place to get facts. So I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping that we can be that district that does that. And this is a great way for students, as Dr. Yarbrough said, for students to do their part in all of this, because this is really designed to help them develop the habits of heart and mind that will allow them to be successful in any walk of life that they decide to go into. So again, I can't say enough for the staff. I can't say enough for the students that complied. And I'm hoping that parents will understand and impress upon their children the importance of all of this. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Musser?
One thing that I'm wondering about is because of how dependent some classrooms are on with technology, and considering that a lot of schools aren't actually giving computers out anymore, like Wilbur Cross, for example. I've had friends and peers who've had to write essays on their phone, right? And I mean, you can only hand in these assignments, reading essays on like Google Classroom, for instance. So what are they supposed to do if you take their phone away during class? I've had to literally give a Chromebook that I was using for Blue Book, the SAT, because my computer for some odd reason does not download the SAT, so that they can actually use it for school to a student. And if we're going to implement this to high school so soon, and you have a lot more students you're going to be implementing this with, I wonder, like, I know there's going to be the cost of already, like, was it 300,000, right? Something like 300,000, but how much more money you're going to have to spend on Chromebooks also in order to to maintain, to allow or to give students equal opportunity, in the classroom, or to even just simply allow them to some assignments entirely.
Thank you, Mr. Musser. Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to Facilities Naming Committee report. Dr. Joyner?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names of people that have been submitted. Some of them you've heard before. I did contact the people at the Adult Ed Center about Reverend Edmonds. I've talked to Eric Witkowski about Bob Lamel and Sal Verderam. There's a petition to name the floor of the field house after the two of them, and to name the gym at Career after Peter Evans. I think he worked there for 40+ years. And on Sunday, I was at a luncheon, a group that's headed up by one of our distinguished cross graduates. And in Newhallville, they want to do something to honor Florence Caldwell because of all the work she's done, both at Lincoln Bassett and at Jackie Robinson. So I think I've done 2 bio sketches, but I'm going to need to talk to our public information officer about formatting that and getting that online, and then talk to Eric Schultz about getting it online so people can vote. What I'd like to do is have some resolution before Christmas. I don't think we're gonna have to raise monies for the signage for the Adult Ed Center. It could be built into the building cost. And Eric said that we shouldn't have to raise money for the floor. The only 2 would be Pete Evans and Florence Caldwell. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Okay. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox?
Okay, so the Head Start report is simply that we are going to meet this Thursday at 5 p.m.
Okay, and Citywide School Building Committee report?
So this group met last Thursday. I was unable to attend, but the School Building Infrastructure and Project Management Stewardship Report is posted. I'll just note that there is an awful lot of delays and projects that are waiting for funding. So, you know, influx of funding is extremely welcome because it's going to mean that a lot of these needed projects can get back on track. So thank you.
And finance and operations.
So in addition to the action items that we've already voted on this evening, we did hear and is posted, and I think it's part of the meeting materials of this, but it's also posted as meeting materials for the Finance and Operations Committee last Monday. We got information about legal contract expenditure report, which is an annual report. We also had an update on, we had a presentation also about the RFP for part-time custodial, and that was presented by Dr. Negron and Mr. Carter, and also was discussion centered around analysis of what parts of that should be brought in-house or not, so that we have data to understand the costs, positives and negatives in terms of costs for that. So that is, that information is posted. And then finally, we also talked about the draft purchasing policy. Groups are meeting on that. We've also heard from Shipman and Goodwin, the educational law experts that we employ, that weighed in on that as well. And we also had discussion around change order language, which is in the current draft, which we've added to it, but also add a request to the group that's working on this to look at that and see what needs to be strengthened or expanded on that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the governance report. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, good evening, board members and the public. My report, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes,
We can
okay.
hear you.
Yes, my report is about a memo that we included in the agenda that you should all be, the board members should have been able to see. What we are trying to do is to give you some guidance around timelines for the different groups who are supporting our work to come and present to our committee, or at least to provide us with materials that have been updated. Please read the memo and understand, and if you don't understand what is our request, feel free to reach out to me or to Ms. Jackson or to Ms. Downer. We are also submitting 2 policies for second reading, and I'm hoping that we can have a vote on that. The one policy is about enrollment and how we handle non-resident school age students. In that, we are updating that policy, just making sure that we make clear that the date of administrative withdrawal from the district shall be 10 school days after written notification is provided to the parent. And we also have collaborated with the enrollment office for them to create a protocol and guidance on how that is done and what are the steps that schools have to follow. Same as what are the steps that the district office has to follow. We also have the other policy that we are submitting is on school climate. And that is a policy that needed to be updated. And we hope that you all had a chance to look at it. It is exactly what CABE recommended that we do. And we hope that we can then vote on it. And so should I make a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. So I make a motion that we accept policy on enrollment, policy 5188, and policy on school climate, P 5131.911A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and we attached to that is also some guidance documents. So everybody has that available.
Second.
Thank you.
Who was the seconder? Dr.
It was,
Joyner?
it was me. I seconded.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on approving policy 5188 and policy 5131.911. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Musser is gone, Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so those items pass.
Thank you.
Good work, Dr. Benitez.
Good work, Ms. Downer, too. Thank you very
Oh
much.
yeah, I can't. I
Okay.
cannot forget the worker bee.
You know,
Sorry about that.
So we're moving on to food service task group report, Dr. Yarborough. Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Benitez.
Thank you. The Food Service Task Force met this month. Two things to point out. There's collaboration as it relates to the food allergy policy and implementation, collaboration between the health department, our food service division, and also school nurses and youth and family division as we're trying to get the documentation of students who need special meal accommodations or other things related to their food allergies. So I appreciate the progress and the conversations that have been happening. And we need to keep it up and keep it forward because this is a very important topic that there's a lot of benefit to when we do well in this area. Secondly, I just want to highlight the work of the Food Gap subgroup. This is a longstanding collaboration between community leaders and organizations, state organizations, as well as our food services department that works with families to share groceries during the time that school is not in session. One change for the upcoming school break will be in how distribution is done. So families who may particularly be interested in groceries, who have children here in the New Haven Public Schools, are allowed to or be asked and invited to reserve bags of food and available to pick them up at certain sites. After a certain time at that location, the remaining food will be available for others in the district who may not have signed up but are interested in having groceries. So I appreciate this group always looking to, one, raise funds, raise awareness, and then also partner with families to have high quality groceries during the school gap. So I appreciate everyone's work. So thank you for your collaboration. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough?
Quick comment.
Dr. Joyner?
Dr. Yarborough, let me thank you for your commitment to living your values. When I first met you, it didn't take me long to realize that you were such a good human being. And people should appreciate all the hard work you do on behalf of the least among us. Thank you.
Thank you for your kindness.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. All right, that was our last item on the agenda, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner, Mr. Wilcox, and Dr. Yarborough. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Colon,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone, and thank you.
Adios.
Good night.